Hello and welcome on board the Newstrack. I'm Rahul Kanwal. Rather than come under pressure, Prime Minister Modi pushing back against those opposing the Farm Acts. And that's our top focus on the Newstrack.
The Prime Minister's most direct assurance.
मैं देश के प्रत्येक किसान को ये विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि पहले जैसे एमएसपी दी जाती थी वैसे ही दी जाती रहेगी।
Modi smashes into the opposition.
मैं सभी राजनीतिक दलों को हाथ जोड़ के कहना चाहता हूं, आप सारा क्रेडिट अपने पास रख लीजिए। आप कृपा करके देश के किसानों को बरगलाना छोड़ दीजिए।
Exposes the opposition's hypocrisy.
उनको तकलीफ इस बात में है कि जो काम हम कहते थे लेकिन कर नहीं पाते थे, वो मोदी ने कैसे किया?
The big farm laws showdown, the top focus on Newstrack.
In his most direct message to farmers, Prime Minister Modi reached out once again to the agitated Kisans, assuring them about the new Farm Acts. The Prime Minister declared that the MSP and the Mandi system is here to stay. He also reiterated that his government was ready to discuss the new laws clause by clause with all the protesting farmers.
As the farm protests continued to rage on,
अगर किसी को कोई आशंका है देश के किसान के हित में, उनकी चिंता का निराकरण करने के लिए हर मुद्दे पर बात करने के लिए तैयार हैं।
Prime Minister Modi took center stage in assuring farmers that the new laws will not hurt them. The Prime Minister particularly picked the issue of MSP, promising that support prices for farmers will never be scrapped.
मैं देश के प्रत्येक किसान को ये विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि पहले जैसे एमएसपी दी जाती थी वैसे ही दी जाती रहेगी। एमएसपी न बंद होगी न समाप्त होगी।
Modi also sought to allay fears on the Mandi system and contract farming.
हमारी सरकार एपीएमसी को आधुनिक बनाने पर, उनके कंप्यूटरीकरण पर 500 करोड़ रुपए से ज्यादा खर्च कर रही है। फिर ये एपीएमसी बंद किए जाने की बात कहां से आई?
The Prime Minister, who was addressing farmers from Madhya Pradesh, launched a tirade against the opposition, accusing them of lying to farmers for political gains.
देश के किसानों को उन लोगों से जवाब मांगना चाहिए जो पहले अपने घोषणा पत्र में इन सुधार करने की बात लिखते थे, वकालत करते थे और बड़ी बड़ी बातें करके किसानों के वोट बटोरते रहे, लेकिन अपने घोषणा पत्र में लिखे गए वादों को भी पूरा नहीं किया।
Targeting opposition governments, he said, similar reforms were promised by other parties, and now they were upset because Modi had delivered them.
मुझे लगता है उनको पीड़ा इस बात से नहीं है कि कृषि कानूनों में सुधार क्यों हुआ। उनको तकलीफ इस बात में है कि जो काम हम कहते थे लेकिन कर नहीं पाते थे, वो मोदी ने कैसे किया? मोदी ने क्यों किया? मोदी को इसका क्रेडिट कैसे मिल जाए? मैं सभी राजनीतिक दलों को हाथ जोड़ के कहना चाहता हूं, आप सारा क्रेडिट अपने पास रख लीजिए। आपके सारे पुराने घोषणा पत्रों को ही मैं क्रेडिट देता हूं, मुझे क्रेडिट नहीं चाहिए।
The Congress at the receiving end of Modi's attack questioned the NDA government's intentions.
प्रधानमंत्री और कृषि मंत्री आज जब मध्य प्रदेश की किसान को संबोधित करने का स्वांग रच रहे थे, तो काश वो मध्य प्रदेश की मंडियों का हाल तो जान लेते। मध्य प्रदेश में 269 सरकारी कृषि उपज खरीद मंडियां हैं। इस कानून के आने के बाद मध्य प्रदेश में 47 मंडियां बंद हो गई और यही नहीं 143 मंडियां ऐसी हैं मध्य प्रदेश में जहां पर कारोबार होना तो दूर 50% कारोबार बंद हो गया.
Farmers remained adamant on their demands of a complete rollback of the farm laws.
हमारा जो किसान है वो पंजाब से चल के दिल्ली आ जाता है. राजा हमारा दिल्ली में बैठा हुआ है. डिमांड हमारी जो है राजा से है, तो राजा का फर्ज है वो मध्य प्रदेश ना जाके दिल्ली किसानों से बात करे, सीधी बात करे ना.
The government over the last week has employed every senior minister to convince the farmers on the new laws. But the unions whose strike entered the 24th day is unrelenting. A breakthrough in the near future looks highly unlikely. Bureau Report, India Today.
If the farmers or the farm union leaders were under the impression that their protests would force the government to buckle under pressure, that doesn't seem to be happening. The Prime Minister holding firm, in fact, reaching out above the protesting farmers to the rest of the farmers across the country and trying to rally support for his farm bills. Where does this leave the protesting farmers? Joining me on the Newstrack tonight, I want to welcome first and foremost VM Singh, National Convener of the All India Kisan Sangharsh Samiti. He's been spearheading this farm protest, and one of the key faces there. Parajita Sarangi is a national spokesperson of the Bharatiya Janata Party, member of the Lok Sabha. We've got Aman Pawar joining us from the Congress. He's an advocate at the Supreme Court as well. VM Singh, I want to come to you first. The Prime Minister is not trying to skirt this issue or find some solution which sees him backing down. Rather, he seems to be going all out to convince and persuade farmers about the righteousness of his decision, which essentially means that all the pressure that you've attempted to build so far has had no impact. The Prime Minister pushing ahead despite the protest that you're leading.
I find a contradiction here. The minister in charge, Narendra Tomar, and Narendra Bhai, the Prime Minister. The minister says, talk to me, find a way out. Supreme Court says, well, there'll be a committee. We are trying to form a committee and resolve the issue. And the Prime Minister says, no, nothing shall happen. Both the Narendras have to probably come at one platform.
But the Prime Minister didn't say that nothing will happen. He instead said, I am trying to explain to you the advantages of the farm bills. If, however, you have concerns or you want to talk, our doors are always open. He's actually folding his arms, reaching out to the farmers and saying, let's have a conversation. If you can convince me and my government about what you're saying, we will make the required amendments.
So far as I'm concerned, I feel that don't be rigid. You're the Prime Minister. People have elected you. Don't be rigid. If people on the roads today and they're telling you, Mr. Prime Minister, please listen to us. We don't want the bills. Don't thrust them down our throat. Please don't do that.
No, but the question that the government seems to be asking now is, who's on the streets? It's largely the farmers of Punjab, most of them, some from Haryana, a little from Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand who are on the roads. In the rest of the country, we still haven't seen any outpouring of anger of the kind that you were threatening when you've been joining us previously. This is largely a Punjab-only problem, and the rest of the country is farmers, because they don't benefit from the MSP regime, don't seem to have as many concerns. And now it's the Punjab farmer and the rest on the other side.
It is not just the MSP regime. It is basically we want everything to be purchased on the MSP, which has been a demand for a long time. Mr. Modi in the 2014 elections had promised in a manifesto, Swaminathan Commission report to be implemented C2 plus 50%. Today he says he's already given it. The point is, keep the trains open for the next 1 month and see the rush here, irrespective whether it's cold or chill or whatever. The point is today the transport is not there. People who can come from, I'll tell you today.
No, I'm not sure I agree with you, because if they wanted to protest in Sangli in Maharashtra, for example, Belgaum in Karnataka, they could protest over there. The fact is that we're not seeing the kind of very small protests. One second. I'm not denying that there are protests, but those are sporadic, smaller, lesser intensity in comparison to what we're seeing around the borders of Delhi. That, Mr. V.M. Singh, is the reality. This is agitating the farmers of Punjab and Haryana more than it is agitating farmers elsewhere.
See, the impression today is given because what you can see here around, you send your camera teams, actually see Maharashtra, see Uttar Pradesh, see Gujarat, see everywhere, farmers are there. You don't expect the farmers to actually come out, in lakhs and lakhs in every street. That will be anarchy. The farmers are coming, giving their viewpoint, and today if they say Punjab was the indicator, take the indication, please take the indication. Don't let this happen and don't go to this extent.
Parijatra Sarangi, here's the risk from the government's perspective. The longer this agitation prolongs, the greater the chance of farmers elsewhere who currently feel sympathetic, even if they're not as agitated about these acts, being drawn towards joining the protest. Is that a fear that the government runs, that the greater the delay, the more farmers may want to join and be part of this protest?
Are you asking me, Rahul?
No, this is for the
very good
BJP
evening.
spokesperson, Ms. Sarangi.
Very well, very well.
A very good evening to all. With the comprehensive and convincing deliberation of Honorable Prime Minister with the farmers of Madhya Pradesh, I think the entire opposition and many of the Kisan unions have been rendered speechless. This deliberation also indicates that PM Modi's government stands with the farmers and stands for the farmers. We are very much concerned about the plight of farmers. We are very sad that our farmer friends have to really spend their time in this cold weather in different parts of Delhi, on the fringes, on the borders of Delhi. It's extremely sad, and that is why Honorable Prime Minister today spoke comprehensively. And I think after his speech, everybody should actually stop arguing and stop placing facts, because the speech of Honorable Prime Minister was packed with facts, figures and arguments.
No, sure.
And
so I don't think anything is taking away.
all the work that has been done so far for the farmers, and it also explains that
but he's
we are
reaching
very
out
much
to those who
with the farmers and
largely
their
support the act. Now the question is, what about the likes of VM Singh Law? What about the protesting farmers who are not persuaded by the Prime Minister's arguments? How do you end this current deadlock, the agitation which is still continuing? What's the plan there?
See, the point is that we have been emphasizing the fact that all kinds of problems, all kinds of impasse can be solved only through discussion, dialogue and talks. Since 14th October, we have been harping on this, and we are continuing with the dialogues. Let me tell you, we are all aware of the fact that Honorable Minister Agriculture, Honorable Sri Piyush Goyal ji, and our Home Minister, they have all sat with the farmers successively. And in fact, I would remind all of you of the tweet of the Agriculture Minister. He says in his tweet, any farmer can come even at midnight and ask for getting the matters and the laws explained to him, and the Agriculture Ministry would be too happy to do that. So I think this is the kind of sensitivity of the government, and at this juncture we are all ready for any kind of talk. And today Honorable Prime Minister himself came and spoke to the farmers. What more do we need? I told you, I reiterate, there were facts, there were figures, there were arguments. And I would just add two things to whatever Honorable PM has said. One is, let's talk of the budget of the Agriculture Ministry. It is rupees 1,34,399 crore this year, 2021. This is 6 times more than what it was in 2013-14 UPA 2 government's regime. So I think, and we are also talking of rupees 1 lakh crore budget for agriculture infrastructure. This has come up in this time's budget. So I think whatever Prime Minister Sahab has said, we all should be convinced. Unless and until we decide to be convinced, we decide to understand, we will not understand. It's said in English, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. I think today the entire opposition, the Congress, the ultra-leftist parties, and many of the Kisan unions, in fact all these middlemen, the commission agents, have been rendered speechless.
Now, most of the attack from the Prime Minister today, Aman Pawar, was against the opposition. He said that the farmers gathered near Delhi are misled as part of a conspiracy. They're being told that their land will be grabbed by others if the new farm reforms get implemented. I want to ask you, did the dairy owner take your cattle because you're selling milk to him? he's explaining in a language that the common people, the common farmers of India understand, that a lot of what you and your party and a lot of the other opposition parties are saying is simply not true. He said, na ye hua hai, na aage chal ke kabhi hoga.
See, Rahul, firstly, it is very unfortunate that the Prime Minister says that the farmers are being misled, while his contemporary, another senior leader of the BJP today, Nitin Patel, who's the Deputy Chief Minister in Gujarat, has said that these people are terrorists, they are anti-nationals, and they are Khalistanis. So first, the BJP should put their house in order and decide that whether they are willing to hold consultations with the farmers or they want to brand them as terrorists, anti-nationals and Khalistanis, as the Deputy Chief Minister of Gujarat, Mr. Nitin Patel, today did. Secondly, as far as his address is concerned, now let me tell you two things very factually. With respect to Madhya Pradesh, his own government has come out with a report just last week which says that out of the 269 government APMC markets that were operating in Madhya Pradesh, 47 have been shut down ever since these laws have come into place. The second thing that the Prime Minister said was with respect to the loan waiver, and he attacked the opposition parties. Now, I have in front of me a statement by late Shri Arun Jaitley ji in the Parliament on the floor of the House, where he very categorically denied that the government of India, Mr. Narendra Modi's government, is not at all inclined to waive off the loan of the farmers, whereas as a matter of record, 3.5 lakh crore rupees of corporate debt of Adani's, Ambani's, Nirav Modi, Mehul Choksi, Vijay Mallya, etc. were waived off by the very same government. So the Prime Minister is speaking in two voices. The other facet to it is that yesterday the Supreme Court very categorically asked the government that till the time you arrive at consensus with the farmers, are you willing to put this law at hold? Today, the Prime Minister has come out in defense of this law after the Supreme Court has asked this very categorically from the Attorney General of India in yesterday's hearing. So our question is that what is the pressure under which the Prime Minister is performing? Because he never had these consultations before these laws were brought in. They were brought in by way of an ordinance.
Aparajita Sarangi, does this comment from the Supreme Court put the government under more pressure?
Yes, of
because
course.
the Supreme Court seems to be nudging the government
Yes, of course.
to put the three laws on hold.
Let me respond. Can anyone in the country at this juncture doubt the policy and the intention of the government as far as the farmers' interests are concerned? I'm sure nobody would. We have been trying to talk to the farmers, we have been talking, and we are ready to talk. And as far as Honorable Supreme Court's hearing is concerned, I think it's continuing. It will take place in January. All the orders of Honorable Supreme Court have to be obeyed, you know, and we are absolutely obedient to whatever the orders come. But then I would just say that the hearing is on, and we need not comment on what has transpired.
I want to show this report to our viewers, compiled by our Delhi reporting team, which looks at the quantum of losses in and around the areas where the protesting farmers are sitting. A top industry chamber did an analysis. They're projecting upwards of 3,500 crore rupee losses because of the fact that the factories in that area, most importantly in Haryana, are not being able to operate. Take a look at this report.
A double blow back to back.
टोटल वेयर हाउस ब्लॉकेज, कोई भी कंटेनर निकल नहीं पा रहा है.
Struggling to recover from the virus meltdown, factories, warehouses, restaurants on the major arteries linking Delhi, Haryana, Punjab and Himachal are hammered once again. The defiant showdown has taken its toll on businesses along the borders of the national capital region. Shipments stranded at manufacturing units, go-downs packed to capacity. With transport movement disrupted, the impact on the local economy is palpable.
दिक्कतें परेशानी हो रही है, ना तो कच्चा माल आ पा रहा है ना पक्का माल जा पा रहा है. ट्रांसपोर्टेशन की बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है, लेबर नहीं पहुंच पाती है. हर तरह से दिक्कत ही दिक्कत हो रही है. पर डे का अप्रोक्सीमेट 2 से 3 लाख रुपए प्रतिदिन का नुकसान है।
Large quantities of bread cannot be moved outside of this plant.
दिक्कत परेशानी आ रही है ये है कि जी हमको लेबर नहीं मिल पा रही है। कच्ची गाड़ी जो सप्लाई होती है आसपास में उनकी गाड़ी नहीं आ पा रही है। ये कम से कम लाख 1.5 लाख तक का नुकसान हो जा रहा है।
Industry groups say the protests have shaken the recovery of supply chains broken by the pandemic earlier this year. The ongoing daily loss is pegged at up to 3,500 crore rupees. Traffic made them work, but there's not much of that now. These famous highway food joints at Murthal reeled earlier from the COVID restrictions, and they're hit harder once again.
मूर्थल में जो है मोस्टली हाईवे का गेस्ट है और हमारे पास जो है न्यू दिल्ली का भी गेस्ट है। जैसे अभी दिसंबर महीना चल रहा है तो लोग शिमला मनाली की तरफ जाते थे यहाँ से, तो जो भी साउथ का क्राउड था वो बिल्कुल भी नहीं आ रहा है। एक कोई भी है गेस्ट है घूमने जा रहा है बाहर तो वही खुश होकर पैसा खर्च करता है, बट आज उस पर बहुत फ़र्क पड़ा है इस चीज़ से।
Opposed stiffly by the farmers, the new farm laws have been welcomed as long overdue reforms by various industry leaders.
Opening up of the agriculture sectors was long overdue. We have already opened up our services and manufacturing sector, and I hope that ultimately our core democratic values of debates and consensus building will prevail. Carry on with this path for making our country prosperous.
For now, though, the stalemate has begun to weigh heavily on regional commerce. Bureau Report, India Today.
You know, the next Supreme Court hearing will only happen after the New Year break in January. And therefore, till then, VM Singh, you know, there are people who are watching this broadcast who live in this area who are being deeply inconvenienced. Many of our young producers, reporters, when they come into work, are being hugely inconvenienced, and they're now beginning to ask, and while of course nobody wants farmers to be inconvenienced, nobody wants farmers to have a tough time, but they're beginning to ask, how long will this continue in this fashion?
This depends on the government. If the government is going to be rigid and people are not going to protest also, their right to life is fine. Our right to life is also taken away. Now, I just want to ask you one thing. The proof of the pudding lies in the eating. Now, today, after these laws have come in, it's all very nice to say this is happening, that's happening, and everyone is going with it. Maize in the country has been selling for 700 as against 1760 MSP. Paddy at 1,000 rupees as against 1868. Now, the farmers today are losing to the extent of 10 lakh crore rupees per year because of the MSP not being paid to them. And this MSP is not the Swaminathan MSP. This MSP is the Modi MSP. And yet today, I mean, I talked to a lot of people and said, why don't you regularize MSP and say nobody will sell less than that? They said they'll take 10 lakh crore rupees. The farmers are losing that much. So what they're doing today is telling you, please help us. Our children are not getting jobs. They are going into drugs. They are going into depression. Help us. The second generation is not farming today. And if we are helping ourselves, we are helping you. Tomorrow, if there's no food, what do?
Yeah, but you know, if land holdings are becoming smaller because land parcels get split generation after generation, that is an economic reality. You can't blame the government for that.
See, the Contract Act you say is coming because of this 86%. It's not.
Sir, he also said that the Contract Act has existed, and Amrinder Singh himself in Punjab, a party of which you've been a part.
No, Rahul. I've been a part ages ago, but let me tell you, let me give you a better version.
Other governments have recommended contract farming. It's happening elsewhere. It's the dairy example. You make it seem as if because there is a contract with some corporate, he'll take your land away. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, said today, you have a contract with a dairy corporate, it doesn't mean it takes your cattle away.
Rahul, let me just explain this to you in 30 seconds right now. Contract Act in Uttar Pradesh. No, 1 second, please, ma'am. Contract Act in Uttar Pradesh is carrying on for the last 68 years in the form of the farmers, the sugarcane farmers having a contract in the form of Form B, Form C with the mills, sugar mills through the societies. And the Prime Minister himself said last year, 2 years ago, that I will ensure that your contract is implemented and you get your money in 14 days as per the contract, or you get interest. Nothing is happening. For 68 years, we're going to court every single year. For 25 years, I'm going to court. So the Contract Act, don't tell us about contract farming. All these people with 2 acres, 3 acres have been going there. We make a block. We give the sugar cane.
But that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I was speaking to the managing director of DCM, Shriram. If you look at how sugarcane, there are times when they don't get their due. But the fact is that this parceling of land, pooling of land parcels actually helps the farmers get a better deal. Now the problem is, Parajita, that you're dealing with emotion, you're dealing with anger, and you're dealing with anxiety. And that's the challenge that the government confronts, that whether it happens later or not, the farmers are genuinely anxious that their land could be taken. They're genuinely anxious that they may not get a good deal, that there may be an oligarchy that will control prices.
Let me tell you that I strongly object to the expression rigidity of government by the esteemed panelist. Government is not at all rigid, and I think every person in the country knows by now. We have been continuing with the dialogue and will continue with the dialogue, and in his speech, Honorable Prime Minister made a very important statement which I would like to kind of bring forth and put before all of you. He said, we have actually translated the dreams of our opposition parties into reality. All these reforms that I've been talking of are under consideration for quite some time and are part of the manifestos of all the governments, all the Congress Party, the Aam Aadmi Party, the Bharatiya Kisan Union. What we have done is we have shown the courage, and we have been able to translate these dreams into these aspirations into reality. And Prime Minister Modi is magnanimous enough to say that if you want the credit, please take the credit, but let the farmers stay with happiness, stay with peace, and let them progress, let them develop.
About life
you should not
at
interfere.
Simbu border.
And right now, the opposition is...
Now remember, joining me on this broadcast now, spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party, Raghav Chadha, the Delhi Chief Minister dramatically tearing apart the acts, one of which he actually notified in the national capital. And we've got the likes of Prakash Zavadekar, the I&B Minister, gunning for the Aam Aadmi Party government, saying that you are guilty of rank hypocrisy. Raghav Chadha.
Well, Rahul, a lot of allegations and absolutely baseless commentary was going on with regard to notification or the alleged notification of a particular law in Delhi. Our repeated argument was that, look, we do not support these laws, but as far as the implementation of a law proposed by the union, passed by the parliament is concerned, it is not within the remit of the state to decide on the implementation or on the non-implementation of a law. And therefore, it wasn't in our hands, it's not done by us. However, a lot of speculation went on, a lot of allegations were leveled, and I'm happy that the Chief Minister of Delhi, on behalf of 62 crore farmers and laborers who work in farmlands, tore up the bill and demonstrated in no uncertain terms, in an unequivocal manner, that the Aam Aadmi Party is against these 3 black laws and stands with the farmer. Now, we have been demanding certain answers from the Bharatiya Janata Party-led government. The first question that comes to one's mind is that which farmer organization came to the Prime Minister's doorstep and said, we wish to get these 3 laws, we want these reforms, we want these changes. Can they name one farmer organization, a genuine farmer organization with substantial mass base, which says that we support the laws or we will benefit from these laws? Unfortunately, these laws have been put in motion without consultation with the farmers. They go against the
Chadha, challenging you to name one serious farmer union before these laws came, said they were in support of your reform package.
Yes, let me tell you that I was part of bureaucracy for 24 years. I was Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Rural Development, and I know how bills are placed in the Parliament. On 14 September 2020, the 3 bills were brought to the Lok Sabha. And let me tell you, when a particular bill is brought to the Parliament, to the floor of the Parliament, there is tremendous deliberation before that. There is tremendous consultation with the stakeholders, and this happened in this case too. I was talking to the Agriculture Ministry, and let me tell you that before the ordinance was actually brought into shape on 5th of June 2020 the 3 ordinances. There were massive consultations, and after that also before 14th of September, the ministry talked to all the state governments, talked to many of the farmer unions and individual farmers, and the record says that through various means, I'm not saying individually telephoning one another, but through various means, about 93 lakh farmers had been consulted. So to say that nobody has been consulted is far from
Raghav
the truth.
Chadha wants to counter that. Raghav.
Aam Aadmi Party,
respond.
having notified the whole thing on 23rd of November,
as far as the ordinance is concerned, let me tell you, and of course, since the previous speaker has been part of the bureaucracy for so many years, I'm very sure that she's aware of the fact that ordinance is not the norm. Ordinance is the exception to the norm. You bring in ordinances when there is an urgent pressing. Let me just finish.
We were discussing something else. We are discussing about stakeholders consultation.
Look, Rahul,
okay, one second. Parajita, you've spoken, you've made a point. Now let Raghav respond. I'll come back to you. Let's have a sensible debate. You've raised a point. Let Raghav respond. I'll come back to you. Raghav.
Well, the moment you start getting exposed, you start verbal heckling. I mean, this needs to stop at some point. First of all, ordinances are not the norm. They're the exception to the norm, and therefore you bring in ordinances only in special, extremely serious exigencies and not on a regular basis. So therefore, one, first of all, does not understand what was the need for an ordinance. Number two, they say that we duly introduced this into the Lok Sabha, we did stakeholder consultation, so on and so forth. These bills were not even debated in the parliament. The parliamentary procedure was not followed. This bill was not even sent to the standing committee after several MPs in writing wrote to the chairperson of the Rajya Sabha that please send this to a standing committee, put a time-bound discussion so that the provision of the bill can be discussed threadbare. The entire procedure of legislation as well as parliamentary procedure was completely destroyed by this government, and they had this tearing hurry to notify the law. And now, what are the consequences, Rahul, of these laws? You see as a consequence that lakhs and lakhs of farmers are protesting, are doing an andolan at the border, and not one minister has gone to the border. I challenge the agricultural minister, since he's been passing sweet sermons on a daily basis and writing 8-page love letters to the farmers, to go to Singhu border, try spending one night in the open sky at 3 degrees Celsius temperature, and he will understand the plight of the Indian farmer.
Now, what happened yesterday, Parajita, was when Narendra Tomar went in his own area, in the Chambal Gwalior region, he was heckled by farmers. This is the agriculture minister in his own area going back to interact with farmers. A group of farmers came in and actually questioned him.
Rahul,
in a state run by BJP.
Rahul, most humbly and respectfully, I would say that is this juncture, the opposition has nothing to say. What do they say? Narendra Tomar ji has had many consultations with the farmers' unions with tremendous respect. We have tremendous respect and concern for the farmers. We are aware of the plight of the farmers. We feel very sad seeing them there in the open, you know, in this cold weather. But whatever has to be done and should be done is being done by the government. We are open for discussion, dialogue.
I have one question.
Okay, I'm out of time.
Narendra Tomar ji has written a very comprehensive letter, and no less than the Honorable Prime Minister today talked to the farmers. So what more? And let me tell you that I'm a member of the Lok Sabha, and to say that there was no discussion in the Lok Sabha
5 hours, ma'am.
Far from true.
No, ma'am, one second.
Parajita, for 3 full days, late into the night, we discussed the matter.
For a bill of this importance, so which is supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime reform, to pass it in the manner that it was, this is not democratic consultation. At the very least, it could have been sent to a committee. More elaborate consultation for a bill of this consequence is required. Very quick, final words. Raghav Chadha, I'm running out of time, please.
Final word. Yes, thank you, Rahul. I'm grateful. Rahul, very briefly, you see, if this bill is so good for the Indian farmer, if this bill will really help the Indian farmer, why isn't the Bharatiya Janata Party able to explain the benefits of these 3 laws to the Rashtra Swayam Sevak Sangh? It is the RSS own organization, BKS, which is protesting. It is Swadeshi Jagran Manch that is protesting. On top of it, my simple question to the BJP, you have to stop. Please keep quiet. Please keep quiet. I never interrupted when you were speaking. Let me finish.
You
let me
don't
finish.
have facts,
Let me
you
finish.
don't have arguments.
The Prime
Please
Minister,
don't get agitated.
when he was the chief,
Listen to me.
Rahul, she really needs to
Okay,
stop. This verbal
one at
hacking
a
needs to
time.
stop.
One at a
I
time,
don't
please.
participate
I can't have a discussion in this fashion. I will not allow this to turn into the level of a banana republic debate. So let's have a consequential conversation. Let Raghav complete. I'll come back to you, Aparajita, for a quick final comment. Raghav, quite quickly, please.
I feel that these BJP spokespersons these days are suffering from this verbal diarrhea. They just can't stop. When Prime Minister was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, Rahul, he chaired a committee on a working group of consumer affairs, which published a report which was signed by the then Chief Minister of Gujarat, Mr. Modi, that MSP should be legalized. It should be a statutory right. But the moment the Chief Minister of Gujarat becomes the Prime Minister of India, he completely takes a U-turn on top of it. Why is the RSS's organizations, the Bharatiya Kisan Sangh, the Swadeshi Jagran Manch, opposing this? If this bill was so nice, why did the Akalita leave the BJP?
Okay.
They did not even
Aparajita,
consult their own
where
people.
are we heading? The farmers are not relenting. The government's not relenting either. Where does this agitation go from here?
Oh, my dear friend is resorting to all kinds of interesting expressions. You know, please have the humility to listen. That's the whole problem with the opposition, including the Aam Aadmi Party.
Well, I've been listening.
The point is that the aspirations of all the political parties are well contained in their manifestos. It's true of the Bharatiya Kisan Union, it's true of the Aam Aadmi Party, it's true of the Congress. And today, Prime Minister rightly said, very clearly said, that we have been able to actually translate their dreams and aspirations into reality. Whatever laid down in the manifestos have actually been done by Prime Minister Modi's government, because we have the courage and we are concerned
so I'm out of time on this debate. I want to thank our guests for joining us. Aparajita Sarangi, Raghav Chadha, Aman Pawar, VM Singh. Thank you very much for joining us on the Newstrack. I'll have more for you on the other side. Stay with us.